Everyone. I'm so excited to be back on this episode of Words, Images, and Worlds, speaking once more with comics creator artist Bart Sears. Bart was on an earlier episode, and I confessed in that episode that he worked on one of the first comics that I read that got me into comics, which was World Without Heroes. And we are currently talking about the latest stage in his creative journey. So, Bart, thank you so much for joining.
Oh, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it, Jason.
Absolutely a pleasure anytime. It's always an open channel for you. I'm curious, as an opening question, last time we talked about your creative origins, but I'm curious about what currently has your creative focus.
Uh, Geez, I guess a bunch of things. I'm working on the third volume of Drawing Powerful Heroes.
Mhm.
Currently have a Kickstarter for soft covers for the first two. I've got two projects that I've co-created with my writing partner and wife, Michelle, that we're waiting for final details on contracts on. Um, I can definitely say one of them is Maiden, which was in Heavy Metal Magazine a few years ago before
Mhm.
uh, that all went bad. And so excited about all that stuff. I just have been in touch with Big Bad Toys, which is bringing the Cops line of toys figures back to a lovely 8-inch size figure, fully articulated. But they're using my old sculpts and stuff. And
Nice.
looks like I'm going to be doing all the package art for it and maybe some new designs if things go well. So that's pretty exciting. And I don't know, there's a few other things I'm working on, but they're slipping my mind right now. Um, so yeah, writing and drawing
Glad to,
still. But
gl- glad to hear that the world of action figures and creative design that way is still treating you well. And I know you have Brutes and Babes, the Drawing Powerful Heroes series that we're talking about as well.
yep, yep, that's currently being kickstarted. Soft cover editions, rebranded a little bit with a new company, Senko, which is my wife's publishing company, basically.
Nice.
I'm just a cog in that machine. And so we're trying to get some things going on our own there. Hopefully, well, that already funded, so that's good. And
Mhm.
now we're trying to hit the second stretch goal, and then we'll launch DPH3 after that, and then hopefully get into some of our own creative properties.
Nice, nice. How did that direction come to be? How did you decide to start uh, drawing powerful heroes, and how did you kind of launch on this path of publishing with your wife?
Um, well, I guess we'll start with drawing powerful heroes. Initially,
Mhm.
that was Roots and Babes from the old Wizard magazine.
Mhm.
Old, yeah, I guess it is old now. Which was a column on how to draw column in Wizard magazine. I've always felt it was more of a why do you make decisions when you draw kind of thing rather than a how to. It's not really a step by step, do this, do that. But that started in Wizard magazine, and a few years ago, I was able, with the company I had at the time, Ominous Press, to revise and update that. I'm actually, this is the first book here into these 144 page monsters that
Nice.
I revised and expanded. And in these versions, there's five brand new tutorials that weren't in Wizard magazine. And for the softcover editions, this one already got a new tutorial from the first stretch goal, and we're pretty close to the second stretch goal, so I'm pretty sure the second one will get a new tutorial as well. And hopefully springboard those into Drawing Powerful Heroes 3. As far as Senko and my wife's publishing company, we started co-writing together about 12 years ago,
Mhm.
and created a bunch of properties and a bunch of stuff that we've been picking away at over the years. And the first thing we sold was Maiden, the heavy metal. And, that was a mixed bag at the time. Heavy metal was going through some rough phases. And maybe some management issues. And we did the first main story um, with them. And then we just got the rights back a little while ago. So we're in talks with a new company to bring Maiden out.
Mhm.
But we got tired of, so, we started Senko with the hopes of, building that into some place where we can feature our own writing and projects and all that stuff. We have a Patreon we haven't launched yet for it and some different stuff, but that's all coming up in the next few months.
Nice. It sounds like you're keeping busy, and I'm wondering, on one hand, how is it drawing these books and going through these books, sort of being metacognitive about your process? You're sort of stepping into this teacher role for readers in a way.
It's it's actually quite interesting. I first taught in the Kubert School right
Mhm.
before I started Wizard articles, and what I discovered in that whole process is you have your lesson plan, and at the Kubert School they were all created for me. I think mostly. I think I could use them or not depending as long as I got the lesson side, that was supposed to be taught. And I discovered, you go through that and it's kind of dry and you're doing stuff. But what I really liked is when the kids started working and start asking questions.
Mhm.
Because for me, um, and probably a lot of artists, as you do it daily, time and time again, you aren't really thinking necessarily about why you're doing the things you're doing, why you made these decisions. You're just getting it done, getting it done, getting it done. So I found it very interesting to try to figure out why I was doing things the way I was doing them. And so the questions really taught me a lot about the process I was going through. And then I was able to find a way to articulate that in answering those questions. So that's kind of how I approach everything in the tutorials and anything I teach. It's that, you gotta, I don't know, kind of dig deep to figure out, it's not just putting some lines down on paper in a certain form or certain way. It's, what answers the story with comics and most illustration, there's a narrative aspect to it,
Mhm.
especially comics with panel by panel progressions, where you really have to set things up and carry actions through and all kinds of stuff. So I always found it fascinating, just those questions when you're talking to students who are trying to figure things out, and it's a great way to learn yourself.
Yeah, you know. And the flip side of that is now, what is it like? What are some of the positives of the crowdfunding experience and that synergy of getting to publish with your wife, with your family?
Uh, Crowdfunding, as you probably know, is kind of hit and miss a
Mhm.
lot of times. It's I, I I guess it's so much based on how much reach you have social media wise, and you know, I know YouTube can be a big part of it, which I don't really do much of anything on YouTube. But luckily, every campaign I've done's been successful, which is good. Doesn't necessarily mean you make any money, but it's successful. And turn this heater off. Where was I? Oh, and
We were
I don't know
talking
the publishing thing. I don't know.
Senko.
We'll
Yeah,
see how that works out.
yeah.
Yeah, we'll see how that works out. I think it's going to do pretty well. I think, the way we're setting up our Patreon will be, you know, helpful, allow us more time to focus on the writing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because as you know, it's always frustrating to have, something you have to do every day to survive. And then that thing you want to do, and you're, trying to find energy at night,
Yeah.
weekends, if you have weekends. As a freelancer, I don't really have weekends, but you know, it's so hopefully we can build it, slowly like we planned, and through a few crowdfunding campaigns, and maybe try to branch out into more um, normal distribution venues when we get a few things under our belt, and we'll see how it goes.
I imagine
The
there's
creative part of it's a blast.
I was going to say, I imagine the reward of getting to create your own. properties and sort of revisit some of the things that you've done and package them this way and rework them. I'm sure that's very rewarding.
It is. It's nice to. I mean, Bruce and Babes has always had a great reception and a great following. You know, it shows for the last 30 years. You know, people have told me how they cut out all the articles and they staple them together so they could just throw out the magazine and just have those drawing articles to go through over and over again. And I don't know how many times I've heard that. A lot of times, and I've gotten a lot of very kind response and support from a lot of creators who grew up reading them, and we're just thankful that they had that to see, uh, how the process was and to get some insight into drawing comics because there wasn't a lot back then. There wasn't a YouTube, there wasn't an internet. Nobody, all you had was Wizard Magazine and How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and maybe a couple of smaller books. But so that's been, incredibly gratifying, and I'm very thankful for that, and very lucky that I was in the right place at the right time to, do Brutes and Babes, and that it's survived as long as it has.
Yeah. But I would imagine part of the takeaway for this for readers is getting to enjoy your art, but then also getting to see some of the process. So it's kind of a double benefit in that way for the reader side as well.
I think so, and I encourage writers, young and old, to read it to kind of get an idea of how an artist thinks and views, what they're given and how they're going to dissect,
Mhm.
that script. I was taught at the keyword school when I went there that once that script is given to me, that's mine. I have to tell the story now. The writer's done. He's
Mhm.
out of the picture. This is now my job to visually tell the story the best way I can, which isn't changing the story or, deciding to draw, a different villain in it or whatever, but it's, I always looked at that as my raw material, you know,
Yeah.
6 panels, that's ridiculous. I'm not doing 6 panels here. It needs 10, whatever the case was, it's my job to visually tell that story. And that's how I approach it. And, I guess that's an older attitude in the last, I don't know, couple of decades, but I can't do it any other way. So I don't know where I was going with that or if I was going anywhere, but I think it's important that, and I looked at it when I was done penciling, they went to the inker. That's his job now. I don't have any say in what he does. He's got to look at what I did and use that as his guide to do his thing. And, so on to the colorist and all that. So, I see it as a very mercenary type of, uh, you know, process making a comic. If that
Yeah,
makes any sense. I don't know.
it does. I like that approach. It's collaborative, but it still gives you power as the artist. And it's not like you're secondary in that position. It just happens to come to you usually second in order, but you really get to infuse it with your own storytelling. I really like that.
Yeah. And penciler is always primary.
Yeah, yeah,
And that's not necessarily ego talking, but the story is visual, and that's my purview. Now, granted, I can't do anything if I don't have a story,
mhm,
but the 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 visuals are what sell the story, and hopefully the actual weaving in and out of the story and the dialogue and characters, make people want to come back. But it's first sold on the visuals.
yeah. From what I hear, that's one of the most complicated parts is taking that script and then figuring out that breakdown process, like you were talking about. Oh, well, it says six, but I actually need 10 panels, and then figuring out the little creative moves within there.
That's my favorite part. Honestly, if I could just break down the story,
Yeah.
I could be happy forever just doing that. And I've done that on several projects, mostly because they paid you so little less just to do breakdowns. It's like it takes me, I can do a book of breakdowns in a week, bring them
Mhm.
on.
Mhm.
But that's the fun part to me is taking what's written and visualizing it panel to panel. That's the most fun part to me. And again, it probably is the hardest part. But if there's any, talent in it, that's something I feel I've always had a talent for was telling that visual story. Um, Talent doesn't get you much unless you actually put it to work. But uh, I think that's the glory part of it. Like when I draw, I don't care about the final line. I've done a million different final line styles on my art. It's the underdrawing that is important to me, that which to me is, the breakdown of the story. The same thing. That's the underdrawing for the actual page is the breakdown. That's the part I like. Same with the drawing. Once I get the figures down, rough that in, I'm like, okay, that's good. I can stop now, but it's not quite how it works.
It sounds a little bit like adaptation, but then it sounds a little bit like engineering at the same time and kind of figuring out how to make use of that space.
Yep. Yep. I agree. And yeah, there's just a lot to go in. And I've done a lot of different art jobs, probably most of the creative art jobs out there. And I still think comics is the most difficult because you have to, every other discipline in art is in a single comic. I mean, you've got to craft so much, draw so much, um, and it's a commercial art. Fortunately and unfortunately, you're paid by the page. So the more you produce, the more money you make, and the faster you produce it, the more they like you, as long as there's a quality level to it. When I got into comics, they almost didn't even care about the quality level. They just deadline, 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 deadline.
Mhm.
And as over time it progressed to, and it was starting to become that when I started. Became more of a penciler's final style look, and inkers were asked less to finish, rougher pencils, and asked more to do what the penciler did, because the pencils were getting so tight. I mean, so many guys were just printing from pencils at different times because we all became so anal because it was our style.
Right.
And that kind of changed the face of it. And that slowed the whole process down because suddenly, instead of, blowing out a couple pages of pencils a day, some pages might have taken you 2 days because of the intricacy of the, whatever you were drawing. So, books went from monthly and eventually shifted to that 3 or 4 panel or 3 or 4 issue story arcs. And they just kept slotting in different people that could, you were working on a story arc that might not come out for a year, and it was only 4 issues so that they wouldn't miss their monthly schedule. But, it was difficult for pencilers that were coming in and were learning that you had to do everything so anal and so tight. You just couldn't do that as fast. So guys like Buscema and Kirby could when they were just banging stuff out.
Mhm.
Relying a lot on just their drawing ability and narrative skills without worrying about the finish of it. You go finish it. You put the final line on. I'm just doing the drawing here. Go away. So I think I prefer that better, but I never really done that much either. So I've been as tight and anal as anyone else. So
Yeah, and I know that the industry side of it continues, and now we're also at this place where there's this creator-owned space that's really opening up, which is kind of a nice
yeah,
parallel to it as
yeah.
well.
It really seems like the industry is really moving toward independence.
Mhm.
Independent publishers, independent, creators. Um, for a number of reasons. Um, but I know I hear a lot at shows, people are real dissatisfied with what, in general, a lot of Marvel and DC books are doing.
Mhm.
And, diehard Marvel and DC fans starting to look elsewhere for stories that actually grab them and art that grabs them. So it seems like the indie thing, which, has gotten bigger since um, the internet, really. And um, the ability to self-publish is much stronger, and to get everybody everybody to see your art and your stories on the internet. But it seems like that's finally becoming more of a possible financial, uh, way to create comics is just do them yourself. And you don't necessarily need a lot to, 100,000 in sales or something crazy to survive, but you just need to be able to generate that consistent sales so you don't starve, really starve too much.
The plight of the artist, the plight of the artist.
Yeah, that's how freelancing is. Yep.
Uh, well, this is the
Yeah.
perfect segue to say for listeners out there that want to go and find the work, are there spaces online? Where can they go to support the campaign? Where can they find out more about you? And then any conventions that you want to mention as well.
Let's see. My website is bartsearsart.com. It's, pretty simple. My Instagram is Bart Sears Art. My Facebook is Bart Sears Art. And I just joined Blue Sky, which is Bart Sears Art. So it's just Bart Sears Art on the website and most any social media. So that's easy place to find me. Um, Drawing Powerful Heroes Volume 1 and 2 soft covers on Kickstarter. There's links on my website and in all the social media spots for people that might be interested in checking it out.